Game of Thrones was a fantasy TV show that aired on HBO from 2011 to 2019, based on the novel series A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. It was unique because of the numerous intertwining plotlines with compelling, morally ambiguous characters, political intrigue, and high stakes that felt like your favourite character could be killed off at any moment, which all made the show a huge hit. It was a cultural phenomenon, becoming incredibly popular and winning more than 300 awards during its run, including numerous Critics' Choice and SAG Awards, BAFTAs, and 57 Emmys. It was touted critically as one of the best TV shows of all time. That was until the series finale in Season 8. One of the reasons for the sharp downfall in quality was the gross mischaracterization of almost all of the main cast, including Jon, Tyrion, Jaime, Arya, Sansa, and most notably for me, Daenerys Targaryen. For the purposes of this video, I have chosen to analyse Daenerys' journey through the categories of Maiden, Mother, and Murderer, which relates to the three of the seven gods of Westeros, the Maiden, Mother, and Crone, and is derived from the triple deity often found in paganism, and refers to the roles of women in patriarchal societies. Daenerys' story begins when she is young and meek. In the show, she's between 15 and 17 years old, thankfully aged up from her book counterpart who was only 13. Daenerys' relationship with her brother is quickly made apparent from his assertive tone and her timidness. She barely speaks, responding to her brother with very few words, and every shot of her in conversation with Viserys is from a high angle, visually representing that she is weaker than him. Viserys is unapologetically cruel, continually threatening her, asking if she wants to wake the dragon, and telling her directly that he would allow her to be raped and abused if he deemed it necessary. With the goal of reclaiming his father's throne, Viserys brokers a deal with the fearsome Dothraki warlord Khal Drogo, offering to exchange Daenerys' hand in marriage for the Khal's army. The obvious lack of concern for her wishes or well-being, and the way she stands apart from Viserys and Illyria as they discuss her future, visually demonstrates that she is mistreated by her brother and has no real authority. At this point in the series, Daenerys fits the classic archetype of the demure and beautiful princess, which is rife throughout fiction, from Tolkien's Arwen to Disney's Snow White. But unlike the classic princess tale, where marriage to the dashing prince is the narrative end goal, Daenerys' story begins with her forced marriage to Drogo. Their marriage is also in stark contrast to typical fairy tale relationships that subsist on true love, the forceful nature of their union instead highlighting the power imbalances in these patriarchal societies and the role of noble women as political tools. This subverts the romantic expectations of a princess story. Daenerys is essentially sold to Khal Drogo. At first, she is miserable with the Dothraki and with her treatment by Drogo, as he repeatedly rapes her, but she learns how to use her sexual power to endear herself to him, her husband's good favour allowing her greater privileges and authority among the Dothraki. Daenerys' position as Khaleesi also grants her protection from Viserys' continued abuses. She gains great confidence from the realization that she is pregnant, the knowledge of her impending motherhood giving her the self-worth necessary to defend herself against her brother.
I am a Khaleesi of the Dothraki. I am the wife of the great Khal and I carry his son inside me.
Her power as a mother also raises her status amongst the Dothraki, who believe her son by Drogo will be the stallion who mounts the world, a prophesied hero who will unite the world, likening Daenerys to the Virgin Mary. Embodying both the kind princess and maternal archetype, she attempts to impede the Dothraki's brutal tendencies of raping and pillaging. But it is this kindness that backfires, as one of the women Daenerys spares betrays her, leading to the death of Drogo, their unborn child, and her fertility. The loss of her husband, son, and perceived value as a woman resulting in her once again being powerless. This is the key turning point for her character. Previously, her status came from the relationship to the men around her. The daughter of the previous king, the sister of the next heir, the wife to the fearsome Khal, and mother to the prophesied hero. But when she loses them all, she uses her self-efficacy to subvert that trope, and create her own power, in a moment later described as a miracle. And instead of becoming the mother of a mortal man, she becomes the mother of dragons. We see the red star pass overhead, and when the fire burns out, Daenerys emerges from the ash with 3 baby dragons clutched to her chest. By awakening her children, she has fulfilled the prerequisite of the Azor Ahai prophecy, which foretells of a great hero who will defeat the darkness. With the constant reminder that winter is coming and the rising threat in the snowy north, Daenerys' intrinsic link to fire as the opposing force of ice cements her as a pivotal character in a novel series titled A Song of Ice and Fire. Daenerys, being a woman, subverts the chosen one and prophesied hero tropes, as these characters are predominantly chivalric, sword-wielding men in classical literature, stemming from patriarchal values and the archetypal male heroes seen in mythology and religion. She also fulfills the magical woman trope with her prophetic dreams and her connection to fire, but subverts it by acting as the hero herself rather than a secondary character using her powers in service of another. Seasons 2 to 4 show Daenerys travelling to the cities of Essos, learning how to be a conqueror and ruler, freeing slaves and punishing masters as she goes. Martin constantly has characters refer to Daenerys as mother and portrays her as a kind and compassionate woman. She acts per Carl Jung's loving mother of the great mother archetype, as seen in this scene. Having just liberated the city, a crowd of former slaves flock to Daenerys of their own volition. Initially, she stands atop the stairs, separated from the crowd, but she chooses to walk into them, dissolving that hierarchical barrier. This is a rejection of the formal relationship expected between a monarch and their subjects, and is instead a gracious and intimate gesture that aligns more closely with her role as the loving mother. Crowd lift her above them, exalting her in a way that is visually reminiscent of classical paintings of saints and messiahs. The wide shots of the crowd and the low-angle view of Daenerys are contrasted to her framing in Season 1, when she was constantly struck with high angles and extreme close-ups that made her seem weak and isolated. As the loving mother archetype, it is Daenerys' compassion for the subjugated that leads to her staunch opposition of slavery and earns her the title Breaker of Chains. Instead of prioritizing the Iron Throne and heading straight for Westeros, Daenerys remains in Essos to ensure that her newly liberated children remain unshackled. But it is here that she learns that ruling is no simple task, and she struggles with the balance between authority and tyranny. This is where the book and the show begin to diverge in significant ways in regards to Daenerys' character. In the show, we see her begin to fall onto the tyrannical side, threatening to burn cities when her dragons grow fearsome enough, and even feeding a potentially innocent man to one of them, neither of which happens in the books, suggesting that director Benioff and Weiss are attempting to form a basis to characterize her as the terrible mother, the archetypal shadow self to the loving mother. Daenerys joins Jon Snow in the fight against the White Walkers, and the two soon become lovers. She is instrumental in defeating the Long Night, her greater number of soldiers and aerial firepower from her dragons doing most of the heavy lifting in the final battle, and at great cost to herself. Yet it is Jon who is praised, a familiar pattern where men take credit for women's work. It is also revealed that Jon is a secret Targaryen, which undermines Daenerys' position as the rightful heir and gives Jon access to her dragons, belittling her narrative importance as the manifestation of fire. Even the show itself acknowledges the sexist double standard, with Varys bluntly admitting that he supports Jon's claim because he's a man.
Yes, because he's a man, cocks are important, I'm afraid.
This will manifest in the controversial final season as Daenerys turning into a tyrannical madwoman who burns King's Landing and murders thousands of innocents for no apparent reason. Her arc from protagonist to villain echoes the classic fallen hero trope, the idealist turned tyrant like Anakin Skywalker or Paul Atreides. But unlike them, Daenerys is denied the lasting legacy and narrative impact that excuses these male characters' actions. Instead, Daenerys is used to defeat the Long Night and dethrone Cersei, then swiftly forgotten, only being remembered as the cautionary tale of female ambition gone awry. The misogynistic trope of the Mad Queen has plagued powerful women in fiction and in real life, with Queen Mary I being dubbed Bloody Mary despite executing fewer people than her male predecessors. Unlike male anti-heroes whose descents are framed as tragic, complex, and narratively impactful, the Mad Queen trope offers no such nuance, and Daenerys' downfall is abrupt and nonsensical. By leaning into the unhinged woman narrative, the show strips Daenerys of moral complexity. Her fiery nature is reduced to female emotional excess, and she becomes a monster to be put down by the real hero, not a tragic protagonist to be remembered. Analysing Daenerys' story through the lens of maiden, mother, and murderer offers a frustrating reflection on how fantasy treats powerful women. She reclaimed traditionally limiting roles like princess and mother, not by rejecting them, but by transforming her femininity and empathy into sources of power, while also subverting many of the sword and sorcery tropes that commodify women's power, through the magical woman or sorceress archetype. She wasn't the chosen one's love interest, she was the chosen one, leading revolutions, ending slavery, and fighting for the voiceless, many of whom, like her, were women brutalized by systemic violence. But the inevitably male showrunners failed to understand Daenerys for the complex female character that she is, and what once read as empowerment was reframed as madness, and her legacy was handed to Jon Snow, a character who embodies the bland, stoic male hero fantasy has long centered. By reducing her to the Mad Queen trope, writers reinforced the very patriarchal structures that Daenerys had overcome throughout her journey, and in doing so, they not only undermine her character, but also subvert the feminist potential the series once promised, leaving behind a narrative that, rather than breaking cycles, merely reinforces them.